Hello everyone at welcome back again sa ating paboritong channel. Yay! At syempre pa, ito ay bilang pagpapatuloy ng ating RPMS Serye 2023. Ayan, malapit na tayong matapos sa RPMS Tools for Proficient Teachers or Teachers 1 to 3. In fact, for today's video, tayo ay nasa Objective 10 na. Tama po, Objective 10. Ulitin ko lang po na in-skip natin yung Objective 8 for the reason that it is a non-classroom observable indicator. So, tapusin muna natin lahat ng 9 classroom observable indicators para po ma-post na rin natin yung ating classroom observation lesson plan for 4th quarter, sample lesson plan. Pagkatapos po nitong video na to, ang susunod po nating upload is our lesson plan for the 4th quarter. Pagkatapos po nun, saka natin uumpisahan ang 6 na non-classroom observable indicators para po sa lahat ng mga proficient teachers or teachers 1 to 3. And that will be the end of our RPMS series for proficient teachers. And then afterwards, gagawin na po natin yung RPMS portfolio para sa ating mga highly proficient teachers. Ayan. So, tama-tama, bago matapos ang school year na to, siguro naman tapos na natin itong mga video na to. And we're ready for our RPMS portfolio. With that, let us start our video with our pa-shoutout. Konti lang to, mabilis lang to. I would like to start with Ma'am Grace Irene Rebuyas. Good morning, Teacher Racky. Napakasipag nito ni Ma'am Grace mag-comment. Thank you so much, Ma'am Grace. We also have from Sir Jose Brazil Vencito. Ito din si Sir. Thank you so much po, Sir. Thanks po again for objective number 9. More blessings po. Kayo, sa inyo din po. And from Ma'am Bernadette Irma Cabalya. Heart. Thank you po for shout out. Thank you for objective 9. Heart. You're always welcome po, Ma'am. And thank you so much po sa inyong support. We also have from Ma'am Eufemia Dolores. Buenas noches, Teacher Racky. Maraming salamat sa walang sawang pagtuturo sa kapwa guro. Thank you again. You're very welcome po. At maraming salamat din po sa inyo. We also have from Ma'am Flor. Another extended help to thank to. Thank you. You're welcome po. And from Ma'am Richlyn Olyares, Objective 11 po sana, Ma'am. Yes, dadating po tayo dyan. Malapit na po tayo dyan. And that's it for our pa-shoutout. So, wala nang paligoy-ligoy pa. Umpisa na natin ang ating Objective 10. To continue our discussion of RPMS tool for Teacher 1 to 3 Proficient Teachers for school year 2022 to 2023, we are on to Objective 10, Designed, Selected, Organized, and Used Diagnostic, Formative, and Summative Assessment Strategies consistent with curriculum requirements. So for this objective, Objective 10, by the way, is our Classroom Observable Indicator number 9. So that means that this objective under KRA4, Assessment and Reporting, the means of verification will be another classroom observation tool, rating sheet, or inter-observer agreement form. So this will be the last classroom observable indicators for this school year. So let me mention again the guidelines for classroom observation for this school year. Only 2 classroom observations are required. So that will be the classroom observation for the 3rd and 4th quarter. So according to the schedule and distribution of classroom observable indicators, classroom observable indicator number 9, which we are going to discuss today, which is also objective number 10 from our RPMS portfolio, these will be rated on the 4th quarter, the same with classroom observable indicators 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, and then this one, classroom observable indicator number 9. So, this is the example of our rating sheet, and this is where we are going to be rated the indicator designed, selected, organized, and used diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment strategies consistent with curriculum requirements. So, for this objective, we are going to be rated according to how we make use of different assessment strategies in our class. So, we always make use of different assessment strategies, and that includes diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment. For this video, we will try to understand the differences and the uses of each assessment strategies so that we can always come up to getting the highest possible score in our rating sheet. So going back, this is our objective again, and the only way that we can make sure of the highest possible score is for us to understand PPST 5.1.2, because according to this, the PPST Resource Package Module 10 offers illustrative and instructive information that can help ratees achieve the objective, and this is the PPST Indicator 5.1.2. So again, this is our PPST resource package. Katulad ng binabanggit ko lagi, ito po ay downloadable from the internet. I suggest that you also download these different modules para lagi tayong guided every time na gagawa tayo ng ating classroom lesson plan. So for this discussion, this will be all based on Module 10 of the PPST resource package. Can you relate to the presented situation in the picture? Are you that kind of teacher? Do you think our learners will fare well in this kind of assessment, considering learners' needs, strengths, interests, and experiences? As teachers, we must be able to grasp assessment as an integral part of the teaching and learning process that allows us to track and measure learners' progress and adjust instruction accordingly. We will act as a support group and will offer authentic and instructive illustrations of practice, anchored on the PPST to help enhance current practice. Before we start, let us understand the key concept. The major key concept for this objective is assessment strategies. These refer to approaches or tactical procedures used to reach a goal. Likewise, these are strategies the teacher employs to gauge student learning. These are assessments used to identify each learner's strengths, weaknesses, knowledge, and skills prior to instruction, that is diagnostic, used to identify the parts of the lesson where learners need improvement, that is for the formative, and used to identify learner achievement for the summative. These are embedded as an integral part of the lesson and are aligned with the intended instructional goals consistent. Teacher Lori Lee teaches 10th grade Araling Panlipunan. She prepares a lesson on the learning competency na tatalakay ang tatlong uri ng karapatan ng bawat mamamayan sa isang demokratikong bansa. Let us explore Teacher Lori Lee's practice. Let us take time to read through her DLP, focusing on the highlighted parts. So this is a DLP of Teacher Lori Lee. On this part, prior to the lesson, she prepares a game for the learners to assess their knowledge about the topic. So that is the review part. So she prepares a game so that she would be able to assess the prior knowledge of the students about the topic. On this part, during the lesson, Teacher Lori Lee conducts an individualized activity to give immediate feedback to learners about their learning. So as she goes on with her lesson, she gave these students an immediate feedback. Nagkaroon siya ng activity so that she would be able to assess through an immediate feedback how the learners are learning. And for this part, at the end of the lesson, Teacher Lori Lee prepares a quiz to check on learners' achievement. Now that you have read Lori Lee's TLP, do you have any ideas on how you can help her improve it? Let us try to analyze Teacher Lori Lee's TLP through these probing questions. What are the assessment strategies employed by Teacher Lori Lee before, during, and after her lesson? Do the assessment strategies address the learning goal? Why or why not? If you were to provide assessment strategies before, during, and after in the same lesson, what would it be? And finally, how do you assess learners? What aspects do you consider prior to assessment? These are some of the suggestions for improvement of Teacher Lori Lee's TLP. In the presented detailed lesson plan, Teacher Lori Lee used varied assessment strategies in her lesson. She was able to provide a pre-assessment to gauge the learner's understanding on the topic. It is suggested that pre-assessment must be done prior to instruction to identify each learner's strengths, weaknesses, knowledge, and skills. That is why we always put the pre-assessment on mostly on the review part. That is prior to giving out the new lesson. She was able to use assessment during her lesson to check on the progress of the learners. Nevertheless, the activity was too heavy for the learners. The learners could have been given a guided activity instead of asking them to write about the topic in 10 sentences. Medyo mabigat na yung binigay na formative assessment ni Teacher Lori Lee. Mas maganda daw kung medyo mas magaan lang muna ang ibibigay natin for the formative assessment. And lastly, she was able to assess what the learners learned after the lesson by having a 10-item quiz. These allowed her to measure the achievement of the learners in the day's lesson. As teachers, we consider some aspects in determining the assessment strategies to use in each type of assessment. For the pre-assessment, teachers need to take into account the purpose. What knowledge or skill is being assessed? Of the pre-assessment, the needs of the learners, age, readiness, levels, learning, preferences, etc., and their own teaching styles. The teachers need also to use strategies that fit in their teaching styles to get maximum results from the pre-assessment. For the formative assessment, teachers need to determine what aspects of student learning they want to measure. Formative assessment strategies can be given to learners individually, as partners, in small groups, or as a class. For the summative assessment, teachers need to determine the purpose of the summative assessment. Teachers need to look at all the outcomes and goals of the unit and determine what types of evidence they will need to demonstrate student learning. They should consider how they can gather that evidence throughout the unit in order to establish the mastery level of the learners regarding specific curriculum outcomes. Forefront in a teacher's mind should be the need to triangulate evidence through conversations, observations. Let us take a look at these different illustrations of practice. As proficient teacher, you are expected to design, select, organize, and use diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment strategies consistent with curriculum requirements. In this module, let us discover the different illustrations of practice aligned with the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers that show specific ways on how you can make use of assessment strategies. Assessment and instruction are parallel in a classroom that focuses on the learner. Teachers need to use a variety of strategies to assess learner readiness for a particular unit of study and to plan their instruction around the needs the learners demonstrate. Ongoing assessment of student learning is an important part of the planning process. There are three main types of assessment. They are pre-assessment, formative assessment, and summative assessment. As we move along, we will come across a selection of assessment strategies applicable in each type of assessment. We hope that this table below clears up some misconception about assessment. So we have the pre-assessment, formative assessment, and summative assessment. What is it? The pre-assessment is an assessment that is used to collect information about learners' strengths, weaknesses, knowledge, and skills prior to instruction. While formative assessment is an assessment that gathers information about student learning. And the summative assessment shows what learners have learned. So that is the differences between these three assessments. So we do pre-assessment to gather the information about learners' strengths, weaknesses, knowledge. And we usually do this prior to instruction. While formative assessment is while the instruction is ongoing to be able to gather information how much the learners is learning so far. And then for the summative assessment, how much the learners have learned at the end of the lesson. When is it used? So pre-assessment is before a lesson or a new unit of study. The formative assessment is during a lesson, while the summative assessment is at the end of a lesson or unit of study. Why is it used? The pre-assessment is used to determine the readiness level of learners and to inform instruction, while formative assessment is used to track learners' progress and to make changes to instruction if needed. And the summative assessment is used to provide evidence of what learners learned. That is according to Regier of 2012. Now for illustration of practice number 1, we are going to start with pre-assessment strategies. Teacher May Grace prepares this lesson plan for grade 10 English. Let us focus on the use of a particular pre-assessment strategy embodied in her lesson. So this is her lesson plan. These are her objectives and the procedures in which letter A, the reviewing previous lesson or presenting the new lesson, we're going to focus on that. As pre-assessment, Teacher May Grace uses a memory matrix chart to expose each learner's prior knowledge before the presentation of the lesson. So in this part, the class will be divided into 4 groups. Each group will accomplish the memory matrix chart on textual aids, in which row and column headings are complete but whose cells are empty. So they need to fill in what they know about the different textual aids and where to find it. Notice that the teacher wants to discover what learners know about the textual aid by allowing the learners to complete the matrix. Through the use of pre-assessment, teachers can plan instruction that is at the readiness level of the learners. Hello teacher, take note that informal pre-assessments are used to determine what learners know, and these usually occur during instruction. They are quick to administer and will give you immediate feedback. This informal nature reduces the test anxiety of learners who feel anxious during more formal assessment processes. So these are examples of informal assessment strategies. Ponder and pass. It is a way to obtain learner input for an upcoming topic. How do we do it? Since Ponder and Pass is a way to obtain learner input for an upcoming topic, what the teacher would do is she would give the topic to the students and then pass a piece of paper with a graphic organizer, which is shown in the sample on the screen, to the members of the class. Then she would be challenging learners to write the facts they know related to the topic. They may include information they want to learn and explore, including questions and comments of interest or concern. In this way, the teacher would be able to assess how much the students know about the topic and what specifically the part of the topic that they are very interested with. Another option is signal and action response. This individual response technique is used to gather informal data in quick and engaging format. So how do we do it? Identify a particular signal and its corresponding meaning. Present these to the learners. Explain that the learner shall choose one action to fit his or her appropriate knowledge base level on the topic. For example, the set A, waving hands, means I know it. Shrug of shoulders, I have a hunch. And then thumbs up, I have no idea. Or for set B, point to your head, I know it. Point to your eyes, I have seen this before. Cover your eyes, I have never heard of it. So the teacher might come up to different statements wherein the students will react according to the given responses. With that, the teacher will have a very quick assessment of how much the students know about the topic. Another one is anticipation guide. It is a tool for gathering information on what learners know about a new unit of study. It allows learners to self-assess their knowledge before a unit of study and then to reassess their knowledge after the unit is completed. So here is a sample table that the teacher can make use to distribute to the students, and the learners would respond if they agree or disagree to the statements according to what they currently know. So for this one, we have the the first two columns is where they're going to check prior to giving the topic. So the statements will be in the middle of the table, and then the last two columns will be answered after the topic has been discussed, so that they will have, and the teacher also will have, an assessment of whether the students had a prior knowledge and what they have realized after discussing the topic. Another one is the knowledge-based corners. It is an assessment to use before the introduction of a unit to reveal learners' content knowledge. So how do we do it? Display 4 large strips of paper and label each one with phrases that match the following 4 corner grids. Be creative and use your content terminology to label the corners. Number 2, post each strip of paper in a corner of the room with the corner name aloud. Emphasize that this activity will assist to guide plans for their lessons. Ask the learners to write down the name of the corner that matches their knowledge level for the topic. So this is the sample strips of paper. Not a clue, I know a lot, I know a little bit, and I've cut it. So they will just have to choose which one applies to each one of them. So the teachers will have a clue how much the students know about the topic. As learners stand in their selected corners, observe the number of learners and the information gathered at each knowledge level. Use the data to plan in the near future in a unit or topic of study. Assure learners that it is acceptable to be in the novice group because the upcoming information is new. This time, we're going to discuss about the formal assessment strategies. One more thing, formal pre-assessments are used to determine the overall achievement level of learners and to identify possible strengths and areas to develop. Usually, pencil and paper tests for easy administration. It is important to note that the scores of pre-assessment should be recorded but never be graded and should only be used to gather information about learners in order to plan instruction. So the formal assessment is what we usually do before the start of a unit or a quarter. So magbibigay tayo ng pencil and paper test sa ating mga students, usually 30 items or 40 items about the topic of the unit, so that we can assess how much they know about it. But katulad ng sabi dito, it is important that we record the result of the formal assessment but never be graded. Hindi po yan linalagay sa ating grading sheet. Ano po? Yung ating mga formal assessment or the pre-assessment or the diagnostic test, to be very specific. Yung diagnostic test, hindi po yan linalagay sa grade, pero nire-record natin as reference to gather information about the learner's prior knowledge. Now, there are different strategies. We have the pre-test. It is a formal assessment given before planning to gather vital information to customize instruction. A well-developed pretest saves time because the data reveal the learner's needs before planning designed instruction. Design the pretest to provide a comprehensive overview that addresses the simple to complex essential. It takes time to strategically develop a pretest. However, it is a valuable tool to gauge learners' prior knowledge. So how do we do it? The following guidelines can be helpful in creating an effective pretest. Administer the pre-assessment 1 to 3 weeks before teaching the new topic or unit. Usually, dapat binibigay natin to 1 to 3 weeks. That is to provide us time for data gathering, analysis, processing, and using the results in curriculum planning. Para meron pa tayong 3 weeks na enough time to plan our lesson. Design the test items so no one can achieve a 100 to 0% score. Select items to challenge each learner taking the test. Plan the test to address the various levels of learners. Present items ranging from concrete to abstract to simple to complex. Disperse easy and difficult questions or tasks throughout the assessment. This deters learners from assuming that easiest items are at the beginning. So, dapat daw yung ating mga easy and difficult questions ay naka-distribute throughout the test. Hindi siya yung nasa unahan lang. Or hindi yung difficult lagi ang inuuna natin. Include manipulatives in the pre-assessment if they are used in related lessons. Use the same pretest as a post-test to analyze growth. Ayan, importante din that after discussing the whole unit, we make use of the same set of exam for post-test. That is to identify whether those items that they don't know yet during the pretest, if they were able to learn that after discussing the unit. Before we proceed to the next sections of this module, Jen and I want to remind you that as learners engage in pre-assessment tasks, their knowledge base expands. They build the foundation for learning with each discovery. Learners become responsible for their own learning as they actively participate in preparation for the new topic of study. Teachers create opportunities for learners to share the results of their discoveries as a prelude to planning optimal learning opportunities. Now, let us proceed to the illustration of practice number 2. Formative assessment strategies. Tapos na tayo dun sa pre-assessment. Now we move on to formative assessment. Let's take a look at more examples of assessment strategies. My own notes alongside the sample material point out how the strategies are helpful. The following are excerpts from Teacher May Grace's lesson on textual aids. Look at the different assessment strategies that she uses in her class. So this one is under developing mastery of the lesson plan, wherein Teacher May Grace uses response strategy as formative assessment during the lesson. So after discussing one part of the lesson, Teacher May Grace gave this response strategy activity as a formative assessment. Using formative assessment provides immediate feedback to learners, identifies what hinders learning and facilitates learning, tracks learner progress, and makes decisions on whether to proceed with the next lesson, reteach, or provide for corrective measures or reinforcements. So you can give situations, you can give statements of whether the students would agree or disagree, yes or no, and that will help the teacher assess if the students have learned something to what has been discussed. And this would also help the teachers decide on whether to proceed to the next lesson or reteach again the topic or provide corrective measures or reinforcements. Formative assessment strategies during the lesson. Example, observation. It is considered as one of the most effective formative assessment tools. How do we do it? Develop keen visual, auditory, and perceptual skills to identify a learner's academic competency, strengths, needs, abilities, behaviors, social interactions, health, emotions, reactions, feelings, and attitudes. This flexible assessment tool can be used anytime, in any environment, and any circumstance. So this is an example of an observation sheet. Observation areas, adapt the following chart to note specific areas while observing the learner. So the teacher can check the different part of this observation sheet that is upon the teacher's observation of the students. Another one is the show of hands. A simple strategy to gauge understanding level of your learners is through a show of hands. How do we do it? Ask learners about the topic, Allow thinking time for the learners, then ask the learners for a quick show of hands in relation to the questions raised. So, example, in a unit on problem solving, you may ask your learners if they recall the steps needed to solve a problem or to determine the operation of a problem. Through a quick show of hands, you can decide whether you need to review with a few learners or with the whole class. So after discussing a point in a lesson, you can do the show of hands just to make sure whether or not the students or the learners have gathered enough information or learning. Another one is the demonstration station. The use of demonstration stations is a great way for learners to show that they know and help you determine the direction of future instruction. So how do we do it? Set up the classroom in such a way that learners can move around. In each station, prepare the materials, tools, manipulatives, etc. for demonstration of skills. Be able to monitor learners' progress in each station. So for example, measure me. This is for TLE class. Set up 2 stations, dry and wet ingredients in baking a sponge cake. Ask the learners to take turns in measuring each set of ingredients. So they can go to the dry ingredients and be able to measure the ingredients and then proceed to the wet station. Provide different sets of activity sheets for each learner in each station. Another part of the DLL of Teacher May Grace is evaluating learner. At this part of the lesson, Teacher May Grace assesses whether learning objectives are met in a day's lesson by giving a quiz. She uses these bits of information to decide whether to remediate and or enrich with appropriate strategies as needed and to evaluate whether learning intentions. Now, there are also formative assessment strategies that are used after the lesson. Example is the open-ended question. Provide a situation to the learners, allow the learners to communicate their thoughts and ideas in the answer. The answers may include many details, an explanation, or a process. So example, the following examples of open-ended questions are provided below. Explain how, what is the reason, tell more about, describe, give your step-by-step thinking on, how did you solve the problem, how can you use the information, what happened next. Why is this important? So these are examples of open-ended questions that we may use after the lesson as a formative assessment. Another one is the graffiti wall. The graffiti wall is a fun activity for learners and gives you a visual representation of what your learners have learned during a unit of study. How do we do it? Each class member writes the most important information in the lesson on a small piece of paper or sticky note. Learners bring their notes and join a community group or small circles. The learners take turns sharing one information with the rest of the class. The variation. If there are no available material, you can make a template similar to the sample shown. This can be done in small groups. Allow learners to write their thoughts depending on your lesson. Another one is the rhythmic fanfare. Each small group selects or is assigned a chunk of important information in review. Have each group create a song, poem, jingle, rap, chant, or cheer to review and celebrate the selected content information. Provide time for groups to practice and present to the class. Ask the rest of the class to share what they learned from the musical bit. Celebrate! Another one is the reflection journals. Pamilyar tayong lahat ng mga teacher dito sa mga reflection journals na ganito. Reflection journals are a type of journal that encourages learners to think about what they have learned and make connections to their own lives. One-sentence summaries. Asking learners to provide you with a one-sentence summary of what they have learned provides you with information about what your learners know about the topic. And the exit cards. These could be used on a regular basis to formatively assess what your learners know, understand, and have learned during a current unit of study. Before learners leave at the end of the class, ask them a question or pose a problem for them to solve. So these are examples of formative assessment that we can make use after discussing a lesson. For illustration of practice number 3, the summative assessment strategies. Teacher Dave wants to provide summative assessment to learners in grade 4 mathematics at the end of the quarter. He hopes to measure the growth of learners in applying the 4 fundamental operations involving fractions and decimals in mathematical problems. He provides several summative assessment strategies. Number 1, one-on-one. He meets with the learners one-on-one to provide evidence to support learner understanding of targeted outcomes. Before beginning an interview, he constructs a number of questions that focus on higher-level thinking, such as the application of the knowledge gained in the 4 fundamental operations involving fractions and decimals in mathematical problems. Another one is a checklist. He uses checklists to record observations of learner learning and provide support for evidence gathered through other sources. Throughout the unit, he uses the checklist to gather information. At the end of the unit, the checklist provides evidence of what learners mastered. And number 3, performance tasks. Teacher Dave prepares math toys for the 4th grade math learners. The learners are asked to solve several mathematical problems involving fractions and decimals using some food products sold in a canteen. Each group will be given problem sheets to solve using this product. The group to finish first will be declared winner of the math race. Rules and rubrics of the game will be discussed thoroughly by Teacher Dave. Take note that summative assessment provide evidence of overall learning and should reflect the findings of the formative assessment. Results of summative assessments are usually used to create a final mark for an outcome. The following are ways to gather evidence of student learning. Take note that our summative assessment is the one that is being graded or being put in the grading sheet, yung summative result na ating summative test. So we can make use of conversations, formative assessment, and summative assessment. And these are some of the examples. Illustration of practice number 4, the different components of summative assessment. The following section discusses the components of summative assessment based on DepEd Order Number 8, Series of 2015, or the policy guidelines on classroom assessment for the K-12 basic education program. Summative assessments are classified into 3 components, namely written work, performance tasks, and the quarterly assessment. Alam na natin lahat to. These 3 will be the basis for grading. So what is a written work component? You might want to remember the following about written work component. This ensures that learners are able to express skills and concepts in written form. These may include long quizzes and unit or long tests to help strengthen test-taking skills among learners. It is strongly recommended that items in long quizzes or tests be distributed across the cognitive dimensions so that all are adequately covered. This enables the learners to practice and prepare for quarterly assessments and other standardized assessments. Other written works may include essays, written reports, and other written outputs. For the performance task component, or the PT, the following are performance tasks prepared by several teachers in different key stages. Notice how they craft the performance-based tasks that are meaningful and contextualized at the same time. So for the key stages, kinder to grade 3, an example is a grade 3 science performance task. The learner should be able to group common objects found at home and school according to solids, liquids, and gas. The performance task is Teacher Iris conceptualized the states of matter exhibit for her 3rd grade science class. Inside the room are common objects found at home and in school. These objects range from solid to liquid and to gas. The learners are instructed to go around the exhibit and identify each object. They are asked to fill out the chart. Rubrics will be used for grading the learner's performance. So this is an example of a performance task. Another one for key stages grade 4 to grade 6. The performance standard is for grade 6 edukasyon sa pagpapakatao na isasagawa ang tamang desisyon ng may katatagan ng loob para sa ikabubuti ng lahat. The performance task is that Teacher Angel uses RAF strategy for the 6th grade education sa edukasyon sa pagpapakatao learners. So the RAF is the role, audience, format, and topic. So the learners are asked to assume a role. Pipili sila kung anong role ang gusto nilang gawin dyan. Consider their audience while examining a topic from their chosen perspective and writing in a particular format. Teacher Angel considers the readiness of her learners by allowing them to choose their role, audience, format, and topic. Another one is for grade 7 to grade 10. Performance standard example is in grade 10 English. The learner composes a short but powerful persuasive text using a variety of persuasive techniques and devices. The teacher Vilma uses GRASP strategy in assessing the 7th grade learners in her English class. The task: you are an advocate of promoting tourist spots and want to promote the local tourist spot in your area by writing a short but powerful persuasive text. You will send this composition to the Secretary of the Department of Tourism for possible funding and free promotion. As a requirement, you will write a short but powerful persuasive text using a variety of techniques and devices. So ito yung pinagawa niya naman ni Teacher Vilma as a performance task sa kanyang English class. And for senior high school grade 11 to grade 12, example is the grade 12 practical research 2. The learner is able to form logical conclusions, make recommendations based on conclusions, and write and present clear report. So as a final performance task for PR2, Teacher Jan highlights learners' achievements through a research plenum. The learners present a research paper highlighting logical conclusions and recommendations based on the conclusions. So there will be 2 rubrics to use for the final paper and for the presentation. You might want to remember this. The teacher enables the learners to complete a performance task about innovative products or do performance-based tasks, allowing them to show what they know and what they're able to do in diverse ways. Now we move on to the quarterly assessment component. Teacher Mark plans to administer a teacher-made test for his oral communication in context class to measure student learning at the end of the quarter. Prior to this, he prepares the table of specification or the TOS From the task, he crafts a multiple choice test for the targeted competencies. However, an objective test cannot solely measure learner achievement. Teacher Mark still needs to validate a learner's achievement through a performance-based assessment. Based on DepEd Order Number 8, Series of 2015, quarterly assessment measures student learning at the end of the quarter. These may be in the form of objective test, performance-based assessment, or a combination thereof. To emphasize the components of summative assessments, here is a table highlighting their purposes and identifying when they are given as stated in DepEd Order Number 8, Series of 2015. So these are the different components, their purpose, and when they are given. The written work, the purpose is to assess learners' understanding of concepts and application of skills in written form. It prepares learners for quarterly assessment, and these are given at the end of the topic or unit. While the performance tasks involve learners in the learning process individually or in collaboration with teammates over a period of time, it gives learners opportunities to demonstrate and integrate their knowledge, understanding, and skills about topics or lessons learned in a specific real-life situation by performing and producing evidence of their learning. It gives learners the freedom to express their learning in appropriate and diverse ways. It also encourages learner inquiry, integration of knowledge, understanding, and skills in various contexts beyond the assessment period. Usually, these are given at the end of a lesson focusing on a topic or skill lesson. It can also be given several times during the quarter. And in the quarterly assessment, it helps synthesize all the learning skills, concepts, and values learned in an entire quarter. This is given once at the end of the quarter. So there are other examples of illustration of practice. For diagnostic assessment or the pre-assessment, the teacher uses assessment strategies to identify each learner's strengths, weaknesses, knowledge, and skills prior to instruction. While the formative assessment is where the teacher applies assessment strategies to identify the parts of the lesson where learners need improvement. Formative assessment can be given before the lesson, during the lesson, and after the lesson. While the summative assessment, the teacher employs assessment strategies to identify learner achievement. The teacher assesses learners individually through unit tests and quarterly assessments that are crafted based on cognitive process dimensions. The teacher assesses learners collaboratively by allowing them to participate in group activities to showcase the evidence of their learning. The teacher recognizes the three components of summative assessments which are basis for grading, and that is the written work, performance tasks, and quarterly assessment. So that is how are we going to do Objective 10. And let me remind you again of our rating sheet. For the rating sheet for the third quarter, we will only be assessed on the first 6 classroom observable indicators. While for the fourth quarter, we will be assessed on the first 3 indicators and the last 3 indicators, the 7, 8, and 9. So for this objective, we will be assessed for the classroom observable indicator number 9, and let us also remind our observers to take note of whether or not we meet the objective within the allotted time, because this will reflect on our efficiency. So for our IPCRF rating computation, we make use of our COT rating sheet 2 or the COT rating used for the fourth quarter classroom observation, and 7 points, of course, we will always aim for the highest possible score, that's 7, which is equivalent to 5. And for the efficiency, we make use of 5 point. Now we are ready to transfer our MOVs to our RPMS portfolio. Ayan. So malapit na tayo matapos sa ating portfolio. We are going straight to the objective number 10, which is under KRA 4. Ayan. So, nailagay na natin yung ating yung ating COT rating sheet and our annotation. For objective, I got a rating of 7, which is equivalent to 5 points in the IPCRF rating under quality. Having a note from my observer that I have met the objective within the allotted time gives me a score of 5 points under the efficiency. Okay, so we have finished our RPMS portfolio. We can proceed to our IPCRF rating sheet. So, for this part, we go to the encoding sheet, and that is, we go to objective 10 under KRA 4. We're not going to put anything on the third quarter classroom observation kasi ito ay nire-rate lang for the fourth quarter. We'll put our score of 7, and that is equivalent to 5. For the efficiency, we type in 5 kasi yun ang ating score. And we got the average and score, which would reflect automatically sa ating part 1. So, that's assessment reporting, KRA 4, objective 10. Ayan, may score na tayo sa ating objective 10. And that would also reflect on the summary. Ayan, objective 10, meron na tayong score for quality, efficiency, average, and score. And that's it for our objective number 10. At yun na nga, ang kabuuan ng ating objective number 10, which is our Classroom Observable Indicator number 9. Tamang sabihin, we are now ready for another lesson plan on our next video, our lesson plan for the 4th quarter classroom observation. So para sa 4th quarter, we will still have the Classroom Observable Indicators 1, 2, and 3, plus the additional Classroom Observable Indicators 7, 8, and 9. So, I'll see you again on our next video, our lesson plan for the 4th quarter classroom observation. Please hit that like button kung nagustuhan niyo ang video na to. At don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Paki-hit na rin po yung ating notification bell to bell all para lagi kayo updated sa mga susunod pa nating maraming video na i-upload. Maraming salamat po. God bless you and let us always be a blessing to everyone. Bye-bye!